Hi there! In this video, I'm going to show you how to make a cute personalized baby sweater. I mean, this may be the favorite thing that I have ever made for a baby. It's just this big, chunky, oversized sweater with a script name. This is one of my fonts, and these little freebies, which you can get on my site. So we're going to start by working in Embrilliance, setting up the file, and then I'll show you some tips and tricks for stitching this out on such a stretchy, chunky garment. Ready? Let's go.
Hello. Before we can start embroidering on our sweater, we need to set up our file. Now, of course, we could use the built-in fonts on our embroidery machine, but we want this to look super cute and appropriate for the material. So I'm in Embrilliance, and even though I have all of the different modules loaded in here, we can do this just by taking advantage of the features in Embrilliance Essentials. So I'm taking my lettering tool. I'm just going to click on this letter up here to start typing in my letters. So the name that I want to stitch out is Ella, so I'm going to type that in. And then I'm going to switch my font to this one, Sweet Magnolia. The reason why I'm going to pick this one is because I wanted a script font, but I want something that has a little bit of weight to it. This sweater has really prominent ribs in it, and I need something that's going to stand up to that texture. So I'm going to drag this up to make it be, I can see down here if I move my head over that it's 4 3/8 inches wide, and that seems about right. Now if I want to move those letters closer together, I can do that too, either manually selecting each one, or I can just dial down the spacing, and you can see how those letters are coming closer together. Now, if I want to add that little flourish of a flower on either side that I had been envisioning, I can merge that in. Now this is a free file you can get off of my website. So if you haven't subscribed, go over there and subscribe, and then you'll find it in the resource library. So it's going to take me a second possibly to locate this, but I can do this by merging it in. So I'm going to merge my stitch file in, and then I've got to go find it. That should be interesting. Okay. Here is my little daisy, and I believe I have it in 2 sizes. I'm going to take the medium ones, and it doesn't really matter what format I use because Embrilliance can read any format. So I'm going to select that and say import, and then I'm going to drag it up kind of like this, and then I'm going to copy it and paste it and bring it down there. Now I want these flowers to sit behind the name, so we'll take the name and I'm going to right click on it and say move last. And it's looking pretty good. If I like this layout, the overall size is now almost 5 inches, which is okay. I could scale it down if I wanted to a little bit, but I think that's fine. The last thing I'm going to do is I'm going to color sort this. So if you look at the way that this would stitch out, it's going to go white, yellow, and then turquoise, which may not be the order in which I want to stitch this out. Because if I'm on a single needle machine, that's going to be painful switching colors all that many times. So I'm going to color sort. I'm also, just for the heck of it, in Embrilliance Essentials, I can also get a good preview of this. I had planned on stitching my name out in a different color than this, so I'm going to click on the color tab, and I can change it to the color I had envisioned, which is lavender. So let's just find a lavender thread. Oh, not in Palace, just in the thread, lavender, go. Okay. And then I can even change the background of my embroidery field, my hoop field, or whatever, hoop background, by going to grid settings and changing my background to like a navy, which is the color of the sweater. Okay, apply. And then I can get a better sense of if I really like it or not. It's really easy to change back to the default settings of your grid if you just go to Embrilliance and then settings and go to grid settings, and then you say restore to defaults, and it'll be back to the way you want it to be. Okay, so let's get back to the problem of the stitch order. I'm going to go to, in Embrilliance Essentials, you have this feature. If you go to Utility and you say Color Sort, and then you say New View, okay, now it's put it in a new document, but here's the difference. Look over here. We have white, then yellow, and then lavender. So if we look at our preview here, much better. It'll do all the white, then it'll do all the yellow, and then it'll do all the lavender. All right. Now, I probably want to save this first version that I made as my .be file because it'll keep the lettering intact and it'll keep the flowers intact. And if I want to do this with a different name, then I can get back to that and I can easily change it. But this one that I've sorted, I want to save this one out as my stitch file, and that's what I'm going to bring over to my embroidery machine. So I'll save this as the .pes file and put it on my flash drive and start stitching it.
All right, so here we have our plain sweater, and I've just put out some of the key things that we need to do this project. First thing we need is we don't need this, but it's pretty helpful to have a printout of the design because this way I can place it ahead of time and really get a great sense of how big and where it's going to be on the sweater. This printout came directly from Embrilliance. You don't need any of the fancy Embrilliance like Stitch Artist, just Essentials. And you can print out a design and it has a little crosshair. So you can lay it out straight and know that it's straight because of the lines through it. And I can see my center point, so that's great. I also have here some fusible poly mesh, which is going to go on the inside of the sweater, some water-soluble topper, which is going to go on the outside of the sweater, and some sticky back stabilizer. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to put the fusible poly mesh on the inside. This is going to be a permanent stabilizer. So first what I usually do is I just cut a piece that is going to be bigger than my design. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. And then I need to know where to put it on the inside. So usually what I do is I just stick a pin right through my design, flip my sweater inside out, and that gives me the center point of where I'm going to put my fusible poly mesh. So let's go ahead and do that. Okay, I've got my pin in my design right there, and now I'm going to flip it inside out. Okay, I have my fusible poly mesh on the inside of my sweater, and you can see the center of the design is right there, and that'll be plenty of space for that design to stitch out in this area. Well, we're on the inside of the sweater, so it'll be on the reverse. Okay, let's turn it. Oh, before I turn it back inside out, I usually like to mark the vertical and horizontal lines on the inside. Okay, here are my horizontal and vertical lines. That's just another tool to help me place this on the embroidery frame. Not perfect, but enough. All right, so now I'm going to prep my frame, and this may look a little weird to you. This is an easy frame by Durkee. I love it so much. It works with my multi-needle machine, and the reason why it's so great is it makes it really easy to float items on here. Now, my sticky back stabilizer is already stuck to the back of my frame, but I got a big hole. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to simply patch that hole, and I can do this a few times before all my stabilizer gets to be way too thick. Okay, so I also like to draw a horizontal and vertical line on here to help me lay out my sweater. So let's do that. Okay, now that I have the vertical and horizontal lines drawn on here, I can use them to lay out my sweater. So what I do is I just fold this in half and I lay it along that line, and the pin's still sticking out there. That's my center point, so that's good that it's lining up with this line. So we're just going to gently unfold the sweater, and then I'm going to flip it inside out. Now that looks straight. Okay, you can also see that I added some tape to secure my design. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to stick a couple pins in here to hold my sweater onto this frame. Okay, it might be a little hard to see, but I've got pins in here, and that's holding my sweater in addition to the sticky back. It's holding it in place. So let's go ahead and get this on the machine. You can see here I have the sweater on the embroidery frame, and I have a little clamp here to kind of hold this back, but I'm going to stay this entire time. I don't want to walk away from my embroidery machine while this is running. I've lined up the start of my design with that center point, so I'm ready to take this paper off of here and replace it with some water-soluble stabilizer. This is because the sweater is really nubby and those stitches could get lost in the ridges. All right, so I think I'm ready to get started, and you'll notice that the first round of stitching is going to be a bounding box, and I like to do that to kind of secure everything in place and to make sure that everything looks straight. So let's go ahead and get that started. You can see here the bounding box is all stitched out, which is great. I think everything looks pretty good, and I'm ready to start stitching the design. Okay, flowers are in. One thing you should notice is see how the flowers look a little incomplete, kind of like right in there. That's the beautiful thing about Embrilliance. When you combine designs, it removes the stitches that are going to be hidden. So the name overlaps those spots, and that's why we don't have the fully finished flower there, because we don't want it to get too thick. So Embrilliance is smart like that. Let's stitch the name. Okay, all done. Looks good. Let's get this off of the frame and remove the basting stitch and the water-soluble stabilizer, and then we'll be done.